Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nivasesa Sindhavani Paskatyare Satarni Vanchakapati Vistaki Pasandhya Patapati Tam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevi Namo Namah. So thank you to all of you who've stayed with us from beginning to end. So this PowerPoint is the overview, and I do teach it separately also. So you see I have some things in here as if I was going to teach it separately. Okay, so these are the four main areas: identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing toward dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. And I know we read this in the beginning of the first class, but let's read through it again. Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields, all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. Why is this dancing? Is it in a kirtan? And I was so happy about this, how you put it together and it spells career Dharma. That wasn't easy, by the way. Okay. So identifying our prosperity type and career field, principle 1. Connecting our nature with our livelihood. So you all remember this guy, right? The guy with lots of money and a poor life, empty life. Lots of money and an empty life. We all have heard of somebody like this, right? Just open up any news headline. Find somebody with a lot of money, he's on his 5th marriage, he's an alcoholic. Huh? And you remember these guys? They don't have a lot of money, but they're happy. And we all know somebody like that too, right? And so we talked about the 6 types of prosperity. And we looked at which of these we individually need in order to feel prosperous. Now, these don't determine your field. These determine your career within a field. And although certain ones of these are particularly associated with certain fields, one can have any of these within any field. Huh? Yes? There are traveling musicians in artistry who have lives of vairagya. Correct? Okay. And I think we all came up with 1, 2, 3 maybe that were really important to us. And in Appendix B, there's a little exercise that you can do. We were doing it this morning, where you really try to understand which of these is really important to me. And as I teach this, I learn more about myself as well. So there's probably 1, 2, or maybe 3 that if you're not getting them in your work, you're not going to feel satisfied and fulfilled no matter how much money you have. And this is not the kind of thing you're going to buy in the evening with all the money you made at work. That just doesn't work very well. All right. And then we talked about the 4 fields: artistry, resources, ideas, and government. And we talked about how these always exist in human society, that there are changing careers. Any of you who didn't come to the other classes, I am running through the stuff that we already learned. So you're going to be a little lost, and c'est la vie. You can watch the other videos online. So we talked about how these are constant in human society. These four fields always exist. People within these four fields always exist, although individual careers within them may come and go, and how the main difference is the Dharma of the fields. So the field of, we have here the field of artistry. Can someone tell me something about the field of artistry? Yes. Beauty and support. Is it beautiful? Is it supportive? What else can someone tell me about the field of artistry? Creating all the functionality in society. What else are they responsible for? All of the enjoyment, all the pleasures in society. What's the mood? The mood is? It's a real service mood. Okay? Is it expansive or satisfied? Satisfied. What kind of satisfaction do these people want? Well, they want a nice place to live, a loving partner, good food to eat, and they want the dignity of being compensated fairly for their craft or their service. Okay? Let's look at the field of ideas. Can someone tell me something about this field? Yes? Not structures. It's not creating structures at all. Systems. They're not creating systems. These people don't create systems usually. They think about the systems. They understand about the systems. Yes. What are their questions about their work? Is it true and is it wise? Is it true and is it wise? Is this an expansive or satisfied field? Satisfied. What are they satisfied with? Internal, mental, intellectual stimulation. Do they all just use language to communicate truth and wisdom? What do some of them use? Mathematics. Do some of them use the arts? Yes, not many, but some. Okay. Are all the smart people in this field? No. Okay. Although most of the intellectuals are in this field. Not all, but most. But there are smart people everywhere. They're the guiding system for society, yes. Is everyone in this field smart? No. No. But most of the intellectuals are in this field. Okay? Okay, resources. What are the main questions they have about their work? Sustainable and regenerative. What else can you tell me about this field? There's an expansive field. They're always thirsty. Always thirsty. What are they providing for society? Prosperity. They're providing wealth. What are they getting? The raw materials. Right? They're the only ones getting the raw materials. Then they're getting it primarily from nature. Yes? Although sometimes you have bankers and traders, but okay. And without these people, nobody what? Everybody's going to starve without these people. These are the people that make sure we all eat. That we have fabric, that we have clothing, that we have metals, that we have construction materials for our houses, right? They're providing all the prosperity. Okay, what are they also? They're the biggest what in society? Employers, givers of charity, and payers of taxes. Now, everybody's supposed to give charity, but they give the most quantity. All right, then we have government. Someone tell me something about this field. Justice. What are the questions they ask about their work? Is it just, meaning justice, and is it honorable? And what's their concerns, right? Ethics, morals. What do they do in society? If you say administrative, people are going to think it's a business CEO. Be careful. I know Prabhupada uses the word administrators, but people get really confused. And they think, oh, you're a business CEO. No. You're a temple president, not if it's a small temple. No, it doesn't mean anyone who's managing anything. The caretakers of society, but not like a groundskeeper. Not that kind of a caretaker. Like a what? Like a parent, right? And is this all political governments? Is this only political government? No. Can also be NGOs, landlords, right? They're the caretakers of society. And they provide what? Protection, security, law, order, facilities, right? Did we say it was expansive also? And what's their mentality? They run into danger. Okay. Then Krishna tells us, how many times does he tell us this? Twice. And here you see the bhayavaha. Don't go into someone else's path. Don't pretend to be someone else. Your work will become a what? A vehicle of fear. All right, so this is looking at ourselves personally. Can someone tell me what this means? Yes, physical, mental, spiritual. What happens physically when you're in your right place or in your wrong place? Top one, physical. What happens? Exhausted or stressed. And if you're in the right place, you'll be energized. All right, what about mentally? When you're in the right place, your mind will easily be your friend. If you're in the wrong place, your mind will be your enemy. All right, what about spiritually? If you're in the right place, you can work in a spirit of detachment. And if you're in the wrong place, you're going to be working in a spirit of attachment. All right. We're still in identifying our ideal, our prosperity type and career field. And those of you just coming, anything we've already taught, I am going at very fast speed as a review. And I'm going to go more in depth with the things we haven't taught. So I'm running through things we've already taught. And Hare Krishna, if you just walked in the door. So principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. Here we were looking at the difference between inclination and expertise, and how Shastra primarily describes those who are dharmic experts in the field. But what we want to know when trying to figure out our nature is we're looking not for dharmic expertise, we're looking for a beginning inclination. And one way we can find that is that our nature cannot be repressed. And are we looking for the information, skills, or values? The values, the Dharma. You can be trained in the information and skills of all kinds of things that are not your values. And when should this be recognized? When you are young. By 13, the empirical research shows it's obvious by 13. We talked about some examples of how this sometimes comes up in childhood in ways that appear troublesome or they're criticized, right? I talked about myself, how I was criticized for teaching, that drum player who was criticized for doing this in the middle of class, right? The devotee kid who was criticized for bossing everybody around and trying to make sure everything was fair. So our values, the devotee kid who was criticized for thinking too much. So because it cannot be repressed, it's going to come out in some way. And if that way is not recognized or encouraged, it may come out in a way that's disturbing. And it is the duty of the adults in our life to recognize that. All right, so of course this relates to something we did not discuss, but I'm not going to spend much time on it. We have a whole chapter on this in the book, and that is the relationship of career to the natural biological life cycle. So that when we're young, Srila Prabhupada says in the second canto, that the brahmachari ashram is for being trained in values of life along with specific training for a livelihood, which I don't know if we do that in any of our ISKCON brahmachari ashrams, but it'd be nice to start. So the idea is that when we're young, our propensities should be noticed, they should be nurtured, they should be encouraged, and as Prabhupada said, we should get specific training in what of our livelihood? The information, the skills, and the values. Modern education only trains you in the information and the skills. Modern education doesn't even recognize that there's 4 categories of work with different values. And then in the prime of life is when you work in your career. In middle age, you retire from career and you guide others, and in old age, you prepare for death. Some people, of course, skip the second stage and go directly from student life to retired life. Okay, a lot of people think that that's it. Just find your nature. Boom, done, beginning, middle, end. But that's not enough to actually be in Dharma. And it's not enough to find satisfaction and purpose. So going beyond that, we have 2 more principles, and the first is extending our prosperity to others. So Krishna says in the 18th chapter that everyone should do 3 things. Yes? Tapa, yajna, and dana. Everyone should give in charity, even the great souls. Now, giving to Krishna is not charity unless you don't know it's Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami nicely explains this, that dana vira rasa is if Krishna comes in disguise, like Bali Maharaj gives to Krishna in charity. But, for example, when I offer food to Krishna, that's not dana, that's yajna. Now, when I take the prasad and I give it to all of you, that's dana. You follow? Yes? And everybody should give in charity. Srila Prabhupada told my god sister Yamuna, if you do not teach others how to cook, because that was her expertise, we didn't have a deity worship minister title, but she was the deity worship minister. And after that was Shilavati Devi Dasi. But he said to her, if you don't teach others how to cook, you will become envious. I really thought about that. What does that mean? So envy means I want to have more and better than you. I don't want anyone to have more or better than me. You can have a nice car, that's okay, as long as my car's better. You understand? Right? You can have an attractive wife as long as my wife is more attractive. You can be intelligent as long as I'm more intelligent. So when I don't share my knowledge, when I don't share my wealth, is because I'm trying to keep more than others. So in the Vedic system, there is no concept of a single unmarried person having a career and keeping all the money for themselves. Doesn't exist. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, because I wanted to earn money, keeping in mind the principles of Dharma, I got a wife. Now this sounds very strange to us. We think, because I have a wife, therefore I earn money. And Bhaktivinoda says, because I wanted to earn money, therefore I got a wife. Because you're supposed to share with someone, at least with your spouse, your children, your older parents, somebody. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says that how much money we make is related to how much charity we have given in previous lives and in this life. You know, we've talked quite a bit about that money in and of itself does not equal prosperity. And I'm sure we also know people who make a lot of money but never have a lot of money. Do you know people like that? Right? Or they have a lot of debt. They have a lot of expenses. They have a huge income and a huge outgo. I mean, I know of people who just never seem to get out of debt, for example. So how much money that we actually have for spending is dependent on how much charity we have given. And if you want to make more money, don't just look for a job with a bigger paycheck. Become more charitable. Now, thankfully, money is not the only way to give in charity. We have our 6 prosperity types. We should also be giving in charity according to the types of prosperity that we are enjoying. So we have a whole chapter on this in the book, I believe. So this is just very brief. This is not in depth. This is the concept. Also, and a number of people have talked to me about this during the course, that I do service for the mission according to my nature. It's very related to this concept. So if my nature is to enjoy vairagya, I share vairagya as a volunteer. Like here, I can help people to live a more austere life. I can teach courses in forgiveness. I can somehow share vairagya with others. If I'm enjoying Aishvarya, if I'm enjoying leadership, then I can do volunteer leadership activities. And this is something that we, at least in some places in our Hare Krishna movement, encourage people that whatever abilities you have that you're using in your life in general, come and use those abilities and share those abilities with others as a form of charity. So what's very nice about this concept is that it broadens our idea of charity. And if you don't have enough cash, I mean, someone asked me a week or so ago, Urmila, I'm always in debt, and I really want to give in charity, but I don't have anything to give. And then I said, what about the prosperity types? Oh, she said. So we always have something that we can give. Whatever we're enjoying, we give. And Krishna is very, very pleased with this. I mean, the Bhagavatam talks about you can give even to the insects and the creatures around your house. Give them some prasad. Okay. Yes? Okay. Any question? I didn't ask for questions before because that was all review. Any questions about charity? Yes. Do you have a mic?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Regarding the different 4 fields we saw and this prosperity we are seeing, so what is the correlation between this prosperity and the fields?
And the fields.
Yeah.
So, can somebody answer this for him? Someone answer this question? I mean, I can answer it, but can someone here answer it? What's the relationship between the 6 prosperity types and the 4 fields? Yeah?
Prosperity types are that which nourishes us in those fields.
Okay, so the 4 fields is what we work in. The prosperity type is what nourishes us in the 4 fields. Are certain prosperity types associated with certain fields? Yes, in terms of what those fields give to society. So the field of ideas tends to give what to society? Jnana and Vairagya, right? Artistry tends to give Shri. So there's prosperity that the fields tend to give, but we're looking here at what kind of prosperity you're getting. So the prosperity types give us more specificity of career or service within a field. Within a field. Okay. So in any of the 4 fields, you might particularly like any of these prosperity types. Like Yasha is community. If you feel energized by working with a group rather than just by yourself, and working with a group that's supportive and it gives each other appreciation, well, that might be true whether you're a carpenter or whether you're a business leader, or whether you work in, a law office, or whether you're a scientist. So any of those people they might really need to have a community of people that are supporting and appreciating each other in order for them to feel satisfied in their work. If they're just working alone and nobody pays any attention, then they may feel empty even if they have a big paycheck. Okay? Like that. Or we were talking, I don't remember when or with whom, we were talking about Gyan. Some people like work where they're constantly learning. Right? So some people don't. Some people want to learn what they need to do their job, and they don't want to have to keep learning more and more and more. So there can be people in artistry who are carpenters, and they're always trying to learn new techniques. What's new techniques of putting in a bevel and having a dovetail? And how do I work with this kind of wood? And how can I do this kind of inlay? And they're constantly trying to increase their knowledge and their skills. And if that's not going on, they're not happy. And then there could be people in resources who are constantly wanting to learn about, say, increased efficiency. And there can be people in government who are constantly studying about, say, history or ethics. And there are people in ideas who may be constantly researching more. And conversely, there are people in those fields who aren't. There may be people in artistry, they're a salesperson in a shop, and they don't want to keep learning about their work. They know the stuff in their shop, they know how to sell, and that's it. If someone said, we need you to take in-service training, they'd be, I don't want to do that. And there are people in the field of resources, right? They're already managing, say they're managing the finances of the company, and they don't want to be in a position where they're constantly studying the markets or something like that. They've done the same job for 25 years, they know how to do it, and that's it. And there's people in government, right, where they don't want to be constantly learning the new laws. They don't want to be constantly learning about ethics. Right? They want to make sure that people get what they need, and that's it. And then there are people in ideas. One good example is many people in ideas who are full-time pujaris as a livelihood. I know many of those people who are not really so interested in scholarliness and learning slokas and keep on learning things. So you can have, Gyan can be your prosperity type or not in any of the four fields, and that's true for all of these. Okay. Any other questions on charity? Aren't most lobbyists connected with resources? Well, you always have some people who are in one field particularly assisting another field. I mean, is your opinion that they're in government assisting resources, or they're in resources working with government? What's your opinion?
They are basically helping both.
Yeah, but what's their value system?
They are more inclined towards resources.
Yeah, their value system is resources, isn't it? They have the Dharma of resources, but they're particularly interfacing with government. And it goes the other way too, like people in the Minister of Agriculture, those are government people, but they're particularly working with resources. So you have, that's not an uncommon situation. And a lot of times when people are confused about their field, it's because they're in a situation like that. Or a law professor in a university is in ideas, but they're particularly working with government. Yeah? Okay. Any specific questions about charity?
Are there any prosperity types which are easy to give in charity and some are more difficult to give in charity? Meaning there is something
Perhaps. I don't think so.
What is the kind of fungibility or negotiability of these prosperity types? Some of
I think they're all negotiable. I think they're all givable in some way. We're usually involving volunteer work, where I'm giving somebody what I have. Okay, we may think that's enough. I'm in my right place and I'm sharing. Well, in order to really have satisfaction in our work, we also have to do ethical and meaningful work of value. You could be in your right place and giving charity and doing criminal stuff, couldn't you? Right? So that's not enough. You've got to do honest work. So what do we mean by honest work? Again, each of these things I'm going over is at least one chapter in the book. By honest work, we mean that you're charging a fair price for your goods or services. You're representing your goods or services accurately. If you're paying suppliers, you're paying them fairly. If you're paying employees, you're paying them fairly, compensating them fairly, that in all directions, everybody's being treated fairly. There's honest representation, there's fair prices. Is that enough? Well, no. You've also got to be doing something that has value. I mean, you could be, in your right field, giving in charity, being honest, and selling tobacco. You get it? So you have to be doing something that's of value and not harm. So value means what people needs. Here we have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Meeting people's real needs. Now, today we have many careers that supply what we would call manufactured needs or artificial needs. So it should be something people genuinely need. That's something Prabhupada actually talked about quite a bit. And again, not harmful. So not, tobacco, alcohol, meat, pornography, and so forth. Now, to do these, to be honest and give something of value without harm, is pretty difficult to do 100%. Krishna says everything has some fault, like smoke covers fire. And in 2023, it's pretty likely that somebody, somewhere along the line, is getting hurt in some way by something connected with what you're doing. Right? You're using a phone, you're using a computer. There's some 8-year-old kid who's being forced to mine metals in Africa for your phone. And it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to make sure that there's nobody anywhere along the line that's getting harmed. But that's not an excuse for doing harmful work or doing dishonest work. Does that make sense? Yes? It's not, well, someone's going to get harmed, so what does it matter? All right. Now this is special. This is really special. This is great, and for most people in the world, that's it. But that's within the law of karma. If you're only here, you can only do good for others as they have earned by their karma. Must be. Because I can't hurt others beyond their karma, so I can't help others beyond their karma either. Which means that they have paid for it. I'm just the, DHL person. Right? Now, if I give you honest work of value, I get benefited karmically. If I give you dishonest work of harm, I get harmed karmically. But I can't help or harm you beyond what you have paid for. Now, what that means is kind of depressing. It means that there's never any net gain. Anything that anybody gets, they've done some kind of payment for. Like we were saying, how much money you get depends on how much charity you've given. By my giving money away, I get money. It all ends up in balance. But we have a desire to do net gain without commensurate payment, don't we? In fact, we define doing good for others as giving something that makes things better in quality, quantity, or time. But how are we going to do that? You have to go beyond the cycle of frustration. So in ordinary, honest work of value, you're following your Dharma, you're getting your prosperity types, you're getting your pleasures, and then because material life is intrinsically frustrating, even if you're following Dharma, then you say, maybe I should quit my job, maybe I should get a new job, maybe I should join a political liberation movement, maybe I should take a vacation to Tahiti, and then that gets frustrating, and then you get right back to your Dharma. And it's intrinsically frustrating because we, the soul, want to give value that doesn't just keep things in balance. So how to do that? To do that, we have to work on the platform of prema. Now, if I'm just talking to a general audience that's not all trying to be devotees, then I'll just say this means love for yourself, love for your work, love for the people you serve, and ultimately love for God. Would you like to go a little bit deeper into that? All right. So I have given an entire hour and a half class just on this. So this is just a little, we have a chapter in the book on additional esoteric thoughts on work of value. We're not really these bodies and these minds. We don't really have an identity within the fields and the prosperity types. We're really souls. And we really don't work for a bank or out in the fields or in a carpentry shop or in a school. Our real employer is Krishna. We actually work for Krishna's company. And what product does he sell? Prema. He sells love. Nice product. We get to taste it, not just sell it. And then we have the mood. We understand that everyone with whom we're interacting, either they're a supervisor in the prema business, a colleague in the prema business, a customer in the prema business, or a potential customer. Maybe right now they shop at the Illusion Mart. And we understand that whatever varna and ashram we have, whatever type of psychophysical nature we have, this field or this or that prosperity type, or whether we're married or we're renunciate or we want to get married or we're tired of being married, or we're old or we're young or we're male or we're female, or we have, an IQ of 2,000 or we have an IQ of 20, whatever. Actually, I work for Krishna's company. And these other things are all my cover story. So I call this the secret agent principle. You all know what a secret agent is, right? A spy. So let's say you work for the Indian government in their intelligence department of the military, and you're a spy, and you're going to go into North Korea. So you don't go to the North Korean immigration and they say, What are you going to do in our country? Oh, I'm a spy. You have a cover story, right? Well, I'm coming to sell automobiles or something. So all of our upadhis, all of our designations are our cover stories. That's all they are. We are not really anyone's son or daughter or husband or wife or mother or father, and we're not really a this or a that. Recently we saw a doctor at Bhaktivedanta Hospital, and he said to me, Urmila, please bless me that I can give people something of Krishna Prema through my medical treatment. And I yes, that's it. Now this doesn't always mean that we're handing people books and prasadam. Giving out books and prasadam is certainly very nice, but that's not always appropriate. So how can we be agents of prema in our work, in our life? So the first time that I met with Srila Prabhupada was in the summer of 1974. So I joined the movement in 1973, and I got married in 1973, and I got first initiated in 1973 without having met Srila Prabhupada. In fact, I didn't even ask to be initiated. The devotee I married was already second initiated, and my temple president decided that because I was married to a second initiated devotee that I should be initiated, and so he recommended me without my knowledge or request. And he just said, Prabhupada's accepted you as his disciple, and I'm like, oh. So that was in December of 73. And then we met Prabhupada for the first time, it was in June or July of 74, when Prabhupada came for the Rath Yatra. I was very fortunate to get my Gayatri mantras personally from Prabhupada in 75, but that's a different story. So anyway, when Prabhupada came to Chicago for the first Rath Yatra, so my father was also there, and my father, my husband, and myself, we went into Prabhupada's room, and my father was talking to Prabhupada about a number of things, and then he said, is it all right if I come to the temple even though I'm not a devotee? I'm not coming to see Krishna. I mean, the next summer when I got Gayatri Mantra, my father became a life member, and he became somewhat of a devotee. But anyway, he said, I'm not a devotee, I'm just coming to see my daughter and son-in-law. So Prabhupada was sitting like this. And he had his dhoti was up around his right leg. You could see the bottom of his right leg and his foot. Whenever I say Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Yuta Padakamalam, I always meditate on seeing Prabhupada like that. This is a very side topic, but his leg and his foot look like a baby's. The skin of his feet were, anyway, that's another topic. So Prabhupada let's start talking about Prabhupada's feet and I'll get completely distracted. So Prabhupada's sitting there like this, right? And my father's saying, I'm just coming to see my daughter and son-in-law. And Prabhupada said, yes? He said, yes. He said, they are loving Krishna. And I was thinking, I'm not sure if I love Krishna or not. And he said, chanting and dancing are symptoms of loving Krishna. He said, so they are loving Krishna and you are loving them, so two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. Math and preaching. So it's not that difficult to be a secret agent in the prema business. Love Krishna and act in such a way that people will love you. That's it. Now, something magical happens. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in the beginning of Madhurya Kadambini, he asked, how does anyone get bhakti? He says, well, God is neutral. Right? Krishna says in the Gita, I'm not anyone's friend and I don't envy anyone. I'm not biased. But the devotees are not. They don't have to be neutral. So the devotee can decide, like Srila Rupa Goswami says, just by good wishes. I want this person to get bhakti. And then Krishna's mercy follows the mercy of the devotee. So if you are trying to love Krishna and you are trying to act in such a way that people love you, which means you'll be nice to people, by the way, that's kind of what it means. And you want them to get prema, Krishna's mercy will follow your mercy. Now, this is the really cool part. If I'm just working in karma, I'm not really an agent of anything. You know, I'm just delivery person. And if I didn't deliver it, someone else would deliver their karma. I'm almost irrelevant. But here in bhakti, I actually have agency. You know, under karma, ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate, I'm a fool if I think I'm the doer. But here in bhakti, I'm actually the doer. Like, excuse my being an American, but how cool is that? Sorry for if I scandalized any of you. I'm not going to be Indian by culture in this life, sorry. Last life, but not this one. We actually get to be the doer. And not only that, we get to give an increase that no one had to pay for. What's that called? Causeless mercy. They didn't have to pay for it. There's no payment for bhakti. Did you know that? I mean, except that you really want it. That's not really a payment. You follow? The payment is you really want it. The payment is greed. Is that a payment? Not exactly. There's not some kind of austerity. I mean, there is. You have to give up your false ego, but that's only an apparent austerity. The false ego is miserable. Your austerity is you have to give up what's making you miserable. Oh, okay. Right. So when we work for Krishna's company, we're actually the doer, we're actually the agent, and we can give value that no one had to pay for. That's not just keeping everything in balance. And it may appear that we're doing that through one of the four fields. And that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether you're the prime minister or a software engineer or a plumber. That's irrelevant. Do you all follow? Yes? Now, not everyone in the world will do this. We don't expect everyone in the world to do this. For many people in the world, just honest work of value without harm may be as far as they're willing to go. But there are many people who can come to this level, and not only in ISKCON, but even in other religions, we can tell people, do your work for the glory of God. Do your work to spread love of God to others. There are Christians, Muslims, Jews who can understand this. All right. So what's another aspect of doing ethical work, which is what we talked about this morning in depth. So we're going to again fly through this. And this is that if we work in someone else's field, our work becomes unethical and it becomes harmful. So doing harmful work isn't just selling tobacco. Doing harmful work is also when I'm bringing my values into a field where my values don't belong. We talked about crossing government and resources. People with the mentality of resources working in government, they're going to try to make a profit out of government. We talked about private prisons. People with the mentality of government working in resources. We talked about the former Soviet Union. When the state took over agricultural, people starved. Crossing government and ideas. What happens when people with the mentality of ideas work in government? They're going to be too merciful to criminals. They're going to have difficulty making fast decisions. They're going to have difficulty being enthused about patriotism. What happens when people with the mentality of government work in ideas? What are they going to do to knowledge? They're going to politicize knowledge. They may also try to impose what kind of a structure? A more hierarchical structure that will impede the flow of ideas. Okay, looking at resources and ideas. When people with the mentality of ideas work in resources, what's going to happen? What are they going to do with everything in the business? They're going to give it away. They're not going to have the enthusiasm, that expansive. They're not going to have that always thirsty. What happens when people with the mentality of resources work in ideas? What are they going to do to knowledge? They're going to use it to make money. Well, they're not thinking of it as exploiting. They're taking their natural values and they're just putting it in the wrong place. They're not evil. When you say they're exploiting, it sounds like but they're not being evil. They're just doing what comes naturally, but it's just they're putting it in the wrong place. That's ideas in artistry. Yes, the pharmaceutical companies who fund research, right? And we talked about that, how that diminishes faith in the field of ideas. The same when government goes into ideas, it diminishes faith. Okay, government and artistry. Okay, when people with the mentality of government go into artistry, well, that's ideas going into artistry. But when government goes into artistry, the government member, they run towards danger, and artistry needs to provide all the support and security. You don't have crisis-loving people putting in electrical wiring and plumbing. And also they'll get very frustrated. They often become vigilantes, and they often become agitators. Yeah, they tend to be insubordinate. When people with the mentality of artistry go into government, what happens? That's artistry and ideas. That would be, the different field. Yes, thank you. They make government a bureaucracy. Also, are they inclined to run into danger? No, they're security people. They're status quo people. Somebody's shooting children in a school and they're just like, I'm not going to go in there. Somebody's shooting a gun. Even though they're wearing a police uniform. All right. Crossing ideas and artistry. When people with the mentality of artistry go into ideas, they're going to sensualize knowledge. Yes, which is also going to diminish faith in the field of ideas. And we compare that to putting spices in the eyes of society. Yes? Also, are they going to take ideas seriously? No, this is, right? They're going to think it's like crossword puzzles. What happens when people with the mentality of ideas go into artistry? They can dry up the field because they're not interested in providing pleasures for society, or they can get into the sensuality of the field, in which case they start causing harm like the food scientists. All right. What happens when we cross resources and artistry? What happens when people with the mentality of resources work in artistry? What do? They'll automate the crafts. They destroy the crafts. Right? What are they going to do to sports? Drugs in sports to get artificial advantages. What are they going to do to fashions, textiles? Constantly changing fashions, right? What are they going to do to entertainment? Just throw in lots of sex and violence. Forget about interesting plots and character development. So artistry is supposed to provide, right, uplifting entertainment for society. But when resources persons go in there, they're just thinking, how can we have profitable entertainment? Right? What about when somebody with the mentality of artistry goes into resources? They're going to struggle with the sustainable, regenerative nature, and so they may end up having enterprises that create pollution. And they're going to have trouble with the expansiveness. They're going to have trouble with feeding people. All right. So is that enough? We're in our right place. We've had that recognized, had it nourished as we're continuing through our life cycle. We're doing honest work that's of real value and not doing harm. We're going to progress a little bit further to Dharmic mastery. So remember I talked about that a lot of harm in society is when people are in the wrong field, which we just had a quick run through of our 2-hour class this morning on that. We had how much we spent, like 7 minutes running through our morning 2-hour class. But I also said how people need to not be corrupt in their right field. You can be in your right field but not cherish it. Though this is cherishing our prosperity and field of work. You could really say the essence of this principle is something that Srila Prabhupada talks about with Sudama Brahmana, that we see everything we get as the prasad of the Lord. We don't enjoy things as bhoga. We enjoy things as the prasad of the Lord, and we enjoy things as what the Christians would call being a steward. That we protect and cherish our sources of wealth because we know they don't belong to us. So all of our prosperity, we could say, comes from nature. And nature is Bhumi. She's the wife of God, Lakshmi Devi. And so we see that all of our prosperity needs to be cherished. If we don't cherish our prosperity, we're like trying to cut off the head of the goose that laid the golden egg, or cutting off the branch that's giving us fruit. We're destroying our own source of wealth. So what's our first source of wealth is our own body and mind. Many people have jobs or careers that are harming them physically and or mentally. They're sitting too much. They don't have time for proper meals. They're under a tremendous amount of unhealthy psychological stress. And in some way, their job is actually harming them. And as our bodies and minds are our main instruments, which we use to work and get our wealth, if we're not cherishing our bodies and minds, we're cutting off the main source of our wealth. I mean, sometimes we think, especially as devotees, well, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, let me just run it into the ground. Right? But that's foolish. It's like if you have a temple car and you don't take care of it, you don't change the oil, you don't rotate the tires. Right? Sometimes I've said the renunciate Maya is it belongs to no one, and the Grahasta Maya is it belongs to me. The real thing is it belongs to Krishna. My body and my mind belong to Krishna. This is the instrument that Krishna has given me, and I need to take care of it. And I should make sure that whatever work I'm doing, that I'm also taking care of my physical and mental health. Then to take care of the physical and mental health of the people with whom we work. Here you see this poor guy and that poor guy. But we want to actually take care of people. Make sure they have what they need. When you're working under a good leader, and I've had a few times, actually it's funny, I've asked many, many audiences, so thousands of people, how many of you have ever worked under a really good boss? And it's always a very small number of people that raise their hand. And I don't think everyone's shy, it'd be like 500 people and 3 of them raised their hand. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 times where I really had a good leader that I worked under. And when you have a good leader, you're taken care of in all respects. You know, you don't have anxiety about how you're going to live or how you're going to pay bills or how you're going to get what you need. You can just think about your work, or you can just think about your service. And they're going to make sure that you get, vacations and rest times. And so I'm going to say something that I don't usually say when I teach this. But, devotees we could really be better employers and employees. Whether you want to talk in terms of paid work or you want to talk in terms of voluntary service. And I've asked devotees who run businesses, why don't you hire only devotees? And they said, well, you hire devotees and they say, oh, it's Narottama Das Thakur's disappearance day. I'm going to come in half day because I'm going to sing bhajans, My Guru Maharaj is in town, bye. Okay, I'm going to go to Vrindavan for a month. See ya. So the problem when you have, when I left to do this travel, before this I'd been traveling constantly, before Mr. COVID came along in the world. And then all of a sudden, like all the other devotees who do the kind of service that I do, we were all stuck somewhere. Yeah. So because I was stuck somewhere, I started doing a lot of local service there. So I ended up building a Tulsi greenhouse and taking care of all the temple Tulsis. And this is not going to, you guys are not going to like this. But I ended up cleaning and maintaining all the temple public bathrooms. See, he didn't like that. Actually, it's really funny, even in that temple, they would introduce me like at the Sunday feast class, this is the chairperson of the Shastric Advisory Council and she takes care of Tulsi. I say, you can also say I clean the bathrooms. They said, no, if I say that to the Indians, then they'll think you're, an outcast. So somebody has to clean the bathrooms. Actually, I saw my cleaning the bathrooms as my most important preaching service. More important than my giving classes. Although I was very happy to outsource it. Do you want to know why? If the bathrooms are dirty, people will not stay at the temple very long. They'll want to make sure they can get home to use their clean bathroom. If the bathrooms are clean, they'll stay at the temple all day and do service. So I saw it, if I really wanted to increase the volunteers working at the temple, you had to have clean bathrooms. Does that make sense? Yeah. Huh? It's not my field, though, so I would have problems with, as I say, I was happy to outsource it. And I don't know if I should tell you the other thing I was doing. Oh, my God, what are you going to think of me? So I was also maintaining the men's ashram. Not the men, just the building. I told the GBC, the temple president, I am not going to be in charge of the men. I said, you make sure they go to the morning program, you make sure they do service, that's not my business. But where I stay is connected to that building, so like the heating and the cooling and everything is all from that building. And so I was running that, and then I went back there one time and I saw that the bathroom was flooded. And I said to the guys, how long has the bathroom been flooded? Oh, 4 months. Did you say anything? No. And I found out nobody was in charge. By the way, that's also not my field, and so it wasn't. But I've turned, my point is that when I was going to leave, I went there like they didn't have bedding in all the rooms. It's like, my God, It's like every room there should have some furniture, a desk and a chair and someplace to keep your clothes. And there should be 2 sets of bedding and a towel and someplace to hang up your towel. And there shouldn't be junk everywhere. And, the bathroom shouldn't be flooded. And nobody was taking care of it at all. So I did all that. And again, it wasn't my field. But anyway, I did all that as an emergency. But before I left, I turned over all this to other people. So I trained one devotee. I knew I would travel again. So I trained one devotee in Tulsi care. Spent about a year off and on training him, and he's doing a much better job than I did. Oh, I also took care of one of the gardens. So I got a landscaper, and he what an incredible guy. So he worked out a design, and I collected the money, and we planted all the plants, and I maintained that. So I got someone else to take care of Toasty's greenhouse, and somebody else to take care of the garden, and someone else to take care of the bathrooms, which I've heard were spotless even on Janmashtami. Woohoo! And then, oh, wow. And then someone else to take care of the men's ashram building. Right? And what I was told was, the town president before I left said, you know, Urmila, hardly anyone does this. Usually people come and do service, and then they just, when they leave, they just leave. And I have to run around figuring out who's going to do things. But I actually took the time. I trained people. I wrote up lists of instructions. I made sure everything was set up for them. I walked them through the service several times. I'm hoping when I come back, I don't have to take over them. I don't have to take the men's ashram back, at least. I hope Gopal keeps doing that. Right? So this is also cherishing the people that you work with. You know, you make sure that people can have vacations. You make sure that their work is covered. Does this make sense? Right? Not that you have to stay someplace forever because nobody else can be trained to do your work. Actually take care of things. Right? Now we were talking about the difficulty with devotees being employees, but there's also difficulty with devotees being employers. Because when you have devotee employers, they can say, you can't take any time off, Prabhu. This is a service. You follow? You have to work 7 days a week. Right? Or we're not going to pay you market rates. It's a service. But I can't pay my bills. So cherishing our sources of wealth means being responsible to take care of people, taking care of the people that are over us, taking care of the people that are under us, making sure that in every area we're actually cherishing it. Do you all not think I'm an outcast because I was cleaning the public toilets? Okay. Because it's really funny. The person who runs the Sunday feast says, no, Mother Urmila, we're not going to tell anybody you cleaned the toilets. Like, okay. Then also cherishing the environment, making sure whatever work we do is also taking care of the earth and the sky and the water, making sure that our work isn't polluting. Then we also want to cherish our prosperity types. So again, this is a very short list. In the book we go into much more detail, but let's just look at some of these. Right? So if I'm getting Aishvarya from my work, I want to make sure others feel smart and competent. There's a nice book called Multipliers and the Multiplier Effect, where they talk about multipliers and diminishers. You know, you have Aishvarya types that come in, okay, everybody, I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're all idiots, and I'm the only one who knows how things can be done here. And that's not cherishing your source of wealth. With Gyan, don't forget about EQ. It's not all IQ. Right? Remember, you can be wrong. No matter how smart you are, no matter how much you know, you can be wrong. To respect Gyan, to respect Virya, to make sure that your source of strength and health is natural, that you're not causing any harm, to use your strength to protect others. With Shri, make sure that your beauty, that the beauty that you're producing and enjoying is of high quality, not just superficial. And don't use beauty to manipulate or fool others. If you're enjoying yasha, don't ask people to show you respect even when you're wrong. Make sure you keep people's trust and you're a person of high integrity. Remember, yasha is the child of kirti and dharma. Keep the dharma side. And if you're enjoying vairagya, don't be such a vairagi that you don't care about anybody. Don't be so detached You're just callous. Be willing to sacrifice for others. So this is protecting our sources of prosperity. This is enjoying our prosperity as prasadam and realizing that these are all aspects of Lakshmi Devi, of Srimati Radharani. Then also cherishing our field. So this is a huge subject. And this has come up many, many times in these classes. Many of you have brought up things, and my answer was, that's a corruption of the field, right? So this is the anti-corruption. Now this is, again, a very short list. In the book, we go into this in much, much more detail. And you remember that when we were talking about the inclinations and the mentality of the people in the fields, I was talking about what people are willing to sacrifice for. Does anybody remember that? The same picture for each of the 4 fields. What people are willing to sacrifice for. Do any of you remember what people in artistry are willing to sacrifice for? Well, really the quality and integrity of their craft and skill, even when there's pressure that you could make more money and you could be more efficient by sacrificing the quality of your skill or service. They're willing to sacrifice. Do we find many people like that? You know, people who are willing to sacrifice to keep some traditional craft? Not so many, but there are some. There's some families that still keep their old way of dyeing cloth. You know, it's reducing. And what are people willing to sacrifice for in government? Justice and care of others. And in government, really, they're literally willing to give their life. I mean, the most extreme example here, of course, is Ramachandra, Lord Ramachandra. What are people willing to sacrifice for in resources? The flow, keeping an ethical flow, an ethical, sustainable flow. What are people willing to sacrifice for in ideas? Unbiased truth. All right, so we have all of those, and then in artistry, to serve one's customers and clients with respect is how you cherish the field. Keep the quality, keep the honesty. Remember how the Shastra mentions honesty as one of the values of artistry. In government, to always remember you're the servant of the people. You know, we talk about this a lot, servant leadership. I mean, a lot of government people talk like that, but to actually have that mood, I'm here to serve the people. And this, again, sacrificing one's personal interests for the public good, which, again, Lord Sri Ramachandra, whose victory celebration is tomorrow. So he's the exemplar par excellence of this, and that shouldn't be imitated. Don't send your wife to the forest just because people are criticizing her. But that was his extraordinary example of self-sacrifice for the public good. And having equality of justice, making sure that you don't have any special interests. I remember some people mentioning like nepotism. And not profiting from government. Okay, in resources, and this is something Prabhupada mentions a lot, treating the plants and the animals with loving kindness and respect. And everybody should be concerned about the environment, but especially in resources because they're particularly pulling from the environment. And everyone should treat employees with fairness and respect, but because the resources people are the primary employers. And Prabhupada talks specifically about the field of resources in 16:1-3, about socham, that cleanliness and on honest dealings. It's interesting, because in the 18th chapter, he says in that field lying is compulsory. But in the 16th chapter, he says don't deal in the black market. Make sure things are actually honest. And in ideas, make sure that you're applying truth for people's benefit and to keep neutral, objective, and impartiality, which relates very much to not being under others' financial control. Now that can be difficult. Why is that especially difficult for the field of ideas? Because most people see the field of ideas as a waste of time, irrelevant. What does it have to do with anything? We could run society with just government resources and artistry. What do we need ideas people for? And so it's difficult for ideas people to live. Thankfully, ideas people tend to be very detached, and so they don't have high demands for what they need to live. But still, in 2023, your home has to be up to government codes in most places, right? What are you going to do? In most parts of the world, you can't just live in a hut under a tree. The government will come and say, sorry, you can't live here. Where's your plumbing? Right? Therefore, in a sane society, people were giving what to those in ideas? Charity. And people were trained, you have to give charity to those in ideas. Why? Because that way they didn't become dependent. If you're getting just random charity from a whole bunch of people, you're never beholden to anybody, and you can keep your impartiality. Nowadays, we don't really do that. We don't really give charity to people in ideas. And so nowadays, people in ideas often have to be beholden to someone, usually in government or in resources, but that's very dangerous. Then respecting the expertise of others. Nobody can be expert in everything. I mean, Prabhupada did say that the devotees should know something of everything and everything of something. He was talking specifically about the brahmacharya ashram, but he was saying in general, devotees should know something of everything and everything of something. But you can't know everything of everything unless you're God. Anybody here God? No. You're all very good looking, but I don't think anybody quite makes it, sorry. So, to respect that others have knowledge in their areas of expertise. I don't know everything. I'm not God. So again, we go into much more detail about cherishing the field. So, in our book. So any questions about cherishing our prosperity type and field of work? Yes. And by the way, I noticed that this is not nearly as interesting as what is my nature.
Just like a person can have a multiple prosperity, similarly, can it be possible that he can be in two field, single person?
Would anybody care to answer this gentleman? Why can't you be in two fields? Huh? You can't have opposing values. You can't be both an expansive and a satisfied person. You can't be both running toward danger and wanting security. It doesn't work. You'd be at a war with yourself. You can be in one field that particularly assists another field. That you can be. You could be in ideas that's especially assisting resources, or especially assisting artistry, or especially assisting government. You can be in government that's regulating ideas, or government that's regulating particularly resources, or government that's regulating particularly artistry. There are definitely people in artistry who work in each of the other three fields specifically. Many people in artistry work independently. You go to a little potter shop, they're not working for any of the other fields directly, although they're serving customers or clients. But you're going to have a secretary in a medical office, a secretary in a legal office, and a secretary in a business office. So they're in artistry, but they're assisting the other fields. And they may have some interest in that field. So you might want to be a secretary in a legal office because you're also interested in the law. Your prosperity type? No, it's just your taste. your values are kind of, what you're willing to sacrifice for, what you want to contribute to society, the expression of yourself. And your prosperity type is more what nourishes you. It's a little different. So someone in the field of government, what they most value is that others are protected and cared for and being treated justly and fairly with morals and ethics. That's their primary value. They may want people to be prosperous, and they may want the world to be beautiful, and they may want there to be truth in the world, but what really drives them is, I want to make sure people are protected and safe and cared for. Now that's a little different from, am I energized by having a position of leadership? Am I energized by having work that fills my life with beauty? It's a little different. Well, each field has its own Dharma. I'll tell you how you could think about it. So each system or organ of the body has its particular contribution to the body, and it also has its particular food, in a sense. The food of the lungs is not the same, the food of the cells in the lungs is not the same as the food of the cells in the pancreas. And their contribution is also different. So our field is much more what we want to contribute, and our prosperity type is, what is our food? What do we need to do that? Is that all right? Now, I may also want to contribute a certain type of prosperity, and the fields tend to be associated with certain prosperity types in terms of what they give. I don't like is lie. Well, what are the two fields that need to be honest? Artistry and ideas. Is it the same kind of honesty? No. Now, if you're a diplomat and you don't lie, you may cause a war. Okay? But if you're researching, you better not lie about your data. And if you're installing plumbing, you better not lie about the quality of the pipes.
So, value system varies, it depends upon the field you are in.
Opposite. Your field depends upon your value system. The field that you should be in depends upon your innate value system. We have an innate value system. We have an innate sense. And we talked about, I think you talked about, where does that come from? I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows but him. It's some combination of our past karma, our past association with the gunas, our vasanas, our desires, and the will of God. The more elevated you are, the more it's going to be the will of God, that you have a mission. And to have a mission, you have to have a particular set of values, because there's different missions. Krishna doesn't want a whole society of floating heads. Imagine that. And so these heads floating around. Krishna wants everything. He wants, beautiful tables and chairs, and beautiful cups, and beautiful entertainment. I mean, just imagine if devotees we're running like Universal Studios and whatever, I don't know, Columbia Studios, I don't know anymore who they are. All the big entertainment industries and all the sports industries. Prabhupada told Peter Burwash played tennis for Krishna. And all the skills and all the crafts. And let's say they were running all the businesses. Suppose devotees were running Monsanto's and Walmart and then devotees running all the governments and then all the universities and all the hospitals. Wouldn't that be lovely? We have a chapter, Vision for a Whole Society. What does that look like? So some of it is also the will of God. And the more elevated you are spiritually, the more it's going to be the will of God and not your karma. But if we're here in a physical body, it probably has something to do with our karma. I mean, unless you're here only on a mission. Anybody here convinced they're here only on a mission? No, I'm not. So, there's some, what percentage is that? I don't know. Probably different for each of us. Maybe for some of us it's 90% karma and 10% mission. Maybe for some of us it's 10% karma and desire and 90% mission. And that may be different from one life to the next. But we have a particular internal value system, and how much of that happens in this life, I don't know. How much of it is affected by our parents, and that nobody knows except for God, really. I mean, so many people have asked this question. But our particular value system says, oh, this is the work that fits that value system. If you have the value system of protecting and caring for others and taking care of morals and ethics, you're an Abhimanyu type. And if you have the value system of serving and taking your pleasure at pleasing others and providing the foundation and the status quo and the pleasure, then you're in, then that's where you belong. Again, think about the bodily cells. Like if you could interview a cell, oh, you're a stomach cell, you're a brain cell, you're a lung cell, you're a muscle cell. In sociology, this is called function. There's two different views in sociology. One is called functionalism, the other is called critical theory or crisis theory. So functionalism is that society is really the varnashram idea that the different parts of the body are meant to be harmoniously working with each other, and critical theory is that everybody's vying for supremacy and everyone's trying to exploit everybody else. Okay. Also in progressing to dharmic mastery is principle 6, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. So a lot of the Bhagavad Gita is dedicated to this. In Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Krishna says, Evam pavaritam chakram. And Prabhupada, in commenting on this, says, chakra means it's a wheel, and a wheel means it's moving. In nature, plants and animals take and give. They take and give. They take and give. We have to voluntarily give. We're always taking. And I was hearing one lecture recently where Prabhupada said, love means not only taking, but also giving. He said, what are you giving? Sometimes Prabhupada will say, you should pay your electric bill to the sun. That we're getting our prosperity, I'm getting my body. Where am I getting my body from? Where am I getting my mind from? Where am I getting my talents, my abilities, my inclinations? Ultimately, I'm getting it from Krishna. So I also have to give something. So that's yajna. Now, yajna means that one should take time off from work and life. And whatever religion one has, one should take time off from work and life and spend some time just connecting with the Lord. Now, eventually, what should happen is, like Bhagavad Gita 4:24, that every moment of our work should be a yajna. However, in order to do that, we also have to take time off. Just like, some people, they have a picture of their family on their desk. I'm working for my family. But if you never stopped work and spent any time with your family, I mean, some people do that. You know, they're in a foreign country and they're just sending money, and every 4 years they come for a couple of weeks or something like that. Krishna, I'm working for you. Yeah, but you don't even know who I am. So this is of course, our sadhana, our japa, our gayatri, our shastra study, our deity worship, that we engage. We take time off and we engage like that. But eventually we want to come to the point that everything we do, at every moment, that we're offering this moment and this moment and this moment, and there's not really, there ceases to be a clear distinction between our sadhana and the rest of our life. Everything is like that. Yes, mam anusmaram yujyacha. When Krishna says yam yam vapi sram bhavam, he doesn't have the next verse that says, so walk away from the battle and leave your family and go to, the Yamuna or the Himalayas. In fact, Arjuna wanted to do that, and Krishna kept saying no. But his next verse is, Mam anusram yujyacha. Think of me while you're fighting. Be absorbed in me in your work. That doesn't mean we should all fight, but it means whatever our work is. And Arjuna didn't fight all the time. He was also running the state. Okay, and our last individual principle is to work above the shades of ego. By the way, I'm going to be sharing these presentations with Priya Chaitanya, who is then welcome to share. I mean, you're welcome to take pictures, but I'm going to be sharing them with him, and I'm going to tell him he can share it with all of you. So my co-author, Rukmini, a.k.a. Dr. Ruchira Datta, she and I decided to call these the shades of ego. So why shades? So tamas is like a dark, thick shade over a window. Rajas is like a thin curtain. Sattva is like a clear window, and being above the shades is like being outside. Somehow we weren't able to put this illustration in our book, so it's just here. And we weren't able to do the logistics of putting this in our book, though. I really like it. And we have this breathing of the projector, It's alive. So, close to the last verse of the Bhagavatam, you have Kurma, description of Kurma, and how his breathing forms the ocean tides, so maybe Kurma's here breathing in our room. All right, so should I introduce you to these guys? All right, you want to be introduced? All right. So let's imagine that life is a big river. So Mr. Thomas pollutes it and fouls it. Oh, and I'm really happy with these two. All right, so here's Mr. Thomas. I just want what's easy, yeah? I'm not ambitious, and I'm not a woo spiritual person. I'm just going to do what comes simply. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'll do the right thing if it doesn't cost me much. I'll buy a vegetarian burger if they serve it at McDonald's for the same price. But yeah, I'm not going to go to a special place and pay a lot of money. Look, whatever's on the television, if the remote's over there, I'm just going to watch the next thing, I take care of myself, take care of my family, and I'm very easily insulted. Don't you insult my family. Don't you insult me. I'll insult you back. Then we have Mr. Rajas, who tries to push and force the river of life. I'm a very good person. I work hard. I sacrifice. I'm very righteous. I'm very honest. I pay my taxes. I'm religious. I go do worship. I'm a builder of society. Look at the hospitals and schools that I've built. And you see all my personal possessions. I have worked hard for all of them. And I will tell you how many hours I have worked, how much money I have spent, and all the endeavor I have done because I have earned them. They are mine to enjoy. I am kind and forgiving because that's what righteous people do. And I'm expecting my name will be in the history books, and probably my statue will be at the park. Then sattva plunges in and floats in the river of life. I am sattva. I am not lazy, and I am not ambitious. I am very spiritual. I have a shelf full of crystals and angels. I'm very balanced. I'm very harmonious. I'm very forgiving because it makes me feel so good inside. And I see everybody equally, not like those other materialistic people. It's funny, I was teaching this to a yoga group, and when I said I have crystals and angels on my shelf, they all started cracking up. Now, what is it to be above the shades? This is I work for Krishna's company. I work for the love company. I work for the Krishna Prema company, and I'm playing and frolicking the river of life. My life is an adventure. I'm just a servant, and I'm here for the wild ride. And sometimes things are up, and sometimes things are down. And in every case, I'm seeing the hand of the Lord. And in every case, I'm seeing everything as a playful adventure that somehow, in my secret agent principle, I can do some sort of service. So the shades are the dark side of our work. And what happens a lot is people think that they have to pull energy from one of these shades or more of these shades in order to work, but that's a mistake. Krishna really talks a lot in the Bhagavad Gita about going above the shades of ego, doesn't he? He tells Arjuna, work according to your nature, but do it above the shades of ego. Interesting, isn't it? And we'd actually like to encourage everyone in the world to work above the shades of ego. So let's look at some examples. We have the example of charity. So charity in tamas is I give the wrong thing to the wrong person. I give alcohol to the alcoholic. Or I give the right thing to the right person, but without respect. Here, Maharaj, here's your charity. Or I give the right thing to the right person at the wrong time. I give you charity when you're sleeping, or when you're on the toilet, or when you're eating your meal. Rajas, I give the right thing to the right person with respect, but I'm calculating. You know, I really didn't want to give this, but my guru told me to give it, or my boss told me to give it, and so if I do it, then they'll think I'm a good person, and then they'll do this thing for me later on. Or maybe I'll get my plaque up on the temple, and then people will respect me, and then I'll get a special Maha plate. I'll get to go to the front of the queue. Or, God, I wish I didn't give that. Why did I give that? I could have spent it on something else. Sattva, I give the right thing to the right person at the right time, at the right place, with respect, because it makes me feel so good. I'm just like, oh, I give in charity. And above the shades, I give the right thing to the right person, the right time, the right place, with proper respect, because it makes who happy? Krishna. What about when we're at work? So if I'm working in tamas, I'm procrastinating, I'm lazy, complaining, insulting, disengaged, stubborn. If I'm in rajas, when things go right, I'm like, yeah! When things go bad, I'm like, ugh. I'm envious, I'm aggressive, I'm greedy. If I'm in sattva, I have constant determination through the ups and the downs, and I don't have attachment. How do we get above the shades? So this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30. 3 don'ts and 3 do's. So first don't. Don't enjoy the prosperity types without cherishing them. Or in our devotee language, Enjoy your prosperity as prasadam and not bhoga. Honor it. I was once at a class by Radhanath Swami where he said, you should be serving the prasadam when you're eating it. That's what we're talking about cherishing your prosperity time. So let go of any desires to enjoy your prosperity without cherishing it. Let go of ownership. I'm not the owner of my body, my mind, my talents, my designation, my money, my prosperity, anything. Now this is interesting, jwara, meaning fever. Let go of fever. And Prabhupada's translation is lethargy from fever. So fever in English, it can mean like you're sick with a fever and so you have no energy. And I've just recently, thank you Krishna, gotten over a bad infection where I had a fever and I had no energy, like no energy. You know, just getting up and taking a bath and getting dressed, then I was exhausted. And so not to be lethargic in your work as if you had a fever. I just don't clear. And a lot of people think that's spiritual. They think it's detachment. I just don't care about anything. Now, to have fever can also mean hyper, like feverish. Ah. And what are the three things to do? Dedicate our work to the Lord every moment. This is for you, this is for you, this is for you, this is for you. To always remember sarvapati vinirmuktam. I'm not these things. I'm not the field. I'm not this inclination. I'm not this value. I'm not any of these things. I am a soul. This is a game. It's a cover story. It's a vehicle. Okay, I have a certain vehicle. I have a little car, you have a big car, he has a train, he has a plane, he has a bus, he has a bicycle. It's a vehicle I've got, okay, fine, learn how to use it, but I'm not that vehicle. And interestingly enough, also, we get above the shades of ego by working according to our nature. Isn't that interesting? It's actually egotistical to try to do something that's not mine. Does that make some sense? Is Shivasham idam sarvam? All right, we've covered the individual principles, and now we're at the two principles for society, for peace and prosperity. Again, this is a phrase Srila Prabhupada used 195 times. And the whole third part of the book is dedicated to the system. So principle 8 is maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields. And we had some nice discussions today in small groups about how things work cooperatively like this. How you can have in one enterprise the 4 fields all working cooperatively. We were discussing that, right? At breakfast? Yeah? So ideas, trains, and guides, and government improves licensing, accreditation, provides venues, provides facilities, and resources, organizes and direct and distributes the flow of money, materials, and energy. And artistry has joint endeavors and provides the basic functionality. Now, it would be really nice if everybody was not only in the right field, but also cherished their field. But that will never happen absolutely. So the fields act as a check and balance of each other. So ideas holds government to the rule of law. This is especially the work of a free press. Remember we talked about the journalists who were the correspondents. So they're making sure the government follows the rule of law. They also train and guide everybody within society, but this is their check and balance. And government has a check and balance through the law. Resources has a check and balance through where and how they spend their money. Now, artistry is interesting because the largest number of people are in the field of artistry. To some extent, they have a check and balance by voting with their feet. Where do they go? But there's another way in which people in artistry have a check and balance, and this is by what they translate into art, music, theater, dance, and so forth. So we've had in the last few years major court cases that went to the Supreme Court in the United States over people in artistry who said, I don't care what the law says, I'm only going to put on my cakes what I believe in. And there's a lot of way, if people in artistry say, sorry, we're not going to translate that into entertainment. You can have this philosophy, you can have this law, you can have this thing, but we don't believe in it, we don't accept it, we're not going to translate it into the media. It's not going to get out. You follow? The people in artistry have actually quite a bit of control over what goes into society. Then within the fields, there should be competition. There should not be competition between the fields. Between the fields, there's cooperation and there's checks and balances. But within the fields, there should be competition. Now, Prabhupada said competition gives life. I mean, in theory, we should want to do our best for its own sake, but in practice, when we have an opponent, it encourages us to do our best. It focuses our ability. It reminds us of our potential. It inspires us to push the edges of our abilities. Now, this should be pleasant competition. We're not trying to be predatory. We're not trying to erase people. It's like when you have all the, clothing stores or all the jewelry stores, or a lot of them, in one place, which benefits both the businesses and the customers. It's a healthy kind of competition. So competition in artistry brings us masterpieces and inventions, and competition in resources brings us better quality of resources, better means of transportation, better prices. Competition in government. Think of the role of having more than one political party. Think of the benefit of having different forms of government. Like we were saying, even in different states of India, you have different types of government. And the types that don't serve people tend to die out. Competition in ideas helps to keep philosophy, medicine, and religion vibrant, pure, and responsive to time, place, and circumstance. The last system principle is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Modern economists made a deliberate, conscious decision to separate concepts of economic prosperity from natural resources. They made a decision, we are no longer going to connect economic prosperity to concepts of the land and resources. And we detail this history in our book. They started defining economic prosperity as growth. You're all familiar with this, right? The prosperity of a country is measured in growth. What is the problem with measuring economic prosperity in infinite growth? It's not sustainable. Why not? Why? They're limited. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. Correct? Yes? What happens when you try to have infinite growth on a finite planet? You end up forcing. You force the land. You pour chemicals into the land to force it to overproduce. You're trying to force that everybody can eat strawberries in January. By the way, Hiranyakashipu did that. You read in the Bhagavatam, he was forcing the plants to produce in all seasons. They're forcing the animals. They're pumping the animals full of antibiotics, right, and hormones. And they're forcing the people. Forcing people to do jobs they shouldn't be doing, that aren't even suitable for human beings, working long hours, harming them. The other thing that happens is a wide economic disparity. If you're going for growth, you're going to have America with 5% of the world's population gobbling up 50% of the world's resources. You're going to have this huge wealth disparity. So the last principle of career Dharma is there should be all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Yes, some people will be richer than others, but everybody should have their basic human needs taken care of with dignity, and to be in a situation where they can be in their proper field and get the types of prosperity that nourish them without any force. And of course, Prabhupada talks a lot about how the earth will even supply more if we follow these kinds of principles. Okay, so we talked about identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, which everybody stayed awake for that, and learning the secrets of making your work deeply meaningful, progressing towards dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. So I hope you found this interesting. Those of you who didn't go to the other sessions, I know a lot of this you were probably lost. If I only teach this, then I reverse the time. I go much faster through the things I took a lot of time on, I go much faster through, and the things I ran through, I spend a lot of time on. By the way, I've taught this in many places, and several versions of it are online on my YouTube channel if you want to go through like that. So we have just a couple minutes for questions and discussions. If you haven't already gotten a book, we do have the books there. They've been a bestseller on Amazon, not every day, but most days since they were released about 4 or 5 months ago, about 4 months ago. So we're really happy with that, and the ebook should be ready soon. We're working on the audiobook. We're working on an online course. As I said, if you want information about those, you can sign up here. I'll give you a QR code. Also, you can just capture this QR code. We will not give you an immediate email confirmation, folks. But it is there. Don't worry. You're on our list. We have some people get an anxiety and they sign up like 5 times. I hope you found this valuable. Oh, thank you. What you can do, because I'm just not that sophisticated, should be. I mean, when we taught hermeneutics, we had a whole complicated feedback form. What I would really, really appreciate, actually, is any of you who want to write a testimonial about the course. If you want to write it up and send it to me, you can send it to Priya Chaitanya and send it to me. That will be very helpful, because we are working on a complete online course. And it will be very helpful to have testimonials there. We would like, obviously, because Prabhupada would like, we would like to teach this to the world. And testimonials is a good way to do that. One of the best testimonials is what confusion or difficulty or doubt was resolved. What did you gain? Any of you that I did any personal consultation with, you can also send a testimonial for that. And I'd also like to ask any of you who read the book and like it, please write a positive review on Amazon. What happens with Amazon is that they have an algorithm. So if they get a certain number of positive reviews, they start promoting it. And it'll start showing up at the top. It's automatic. It'll just start showing up at the top. So if people are just searching for careers or jobs, it will come up. So I know that a lot of people don't write reviews. I know it takes time and etc. But even just, a few sentences, but only if you've read the book and you liked it. I'm not, So we have actually a whole section in the book where we talk about this. We do have those exercises at the back of the book. We have the exercises to help you identify the richness, identify the fields. Then we have an exercise to help you identify what shades of ego are troubling you. We have an exercise to go through, which I think a lot of you did today, to help understand your nature. We do mention some other tests in the book. The more I've been teaching this, the more convinced I've become that trying to understand this through a paper and pencil test is sort of the antithesis to what this is all about. And that was kind of, as my daughter would say, a journey for me. But I think a lot of us, we want to go to an astrologer and they just put our birth information into a computer and the computer comes out and says, you are this and you should be doing this, and then you just do that and you're happy. Or we just want to, fill out a multiple choice exam that's computer scored. And a lot of these sort of things, personality tests, a good astrologer, and the word good is the operative word here. Should I say that again? A good astrologer, and good is the operative word here. I'm going to say that again. A good astrologer, and good is the operative word here. If they're just looking at the moon lagna, the nakshatra of the moon, and from that they're going to tell you your field, smile and walk away. Okay? So, you can look at these things, but it's best, really, what you want to do is introspect. And what I found in teaching this is some people just the overview, not the way I taught it now, where I race through the fields and the prosperity types, but a lot of people just learning the overview. I mean, I taught this overview in 45 minutes in Lloyd's Bank in London to 30 people. Of course, I was speaking a little faster. 3 people of those came up to me afterwards and say, I know what I need to do in my work. So I found there are people who can just the overview or just going through these classes and going through the book is enough. Some people really benefit from a one-on-one consultation, which I do as time permits. Some people that takes 5 minutes. Some people it's a multiple thing. Sometimes I'm meeting with someone and they think about it and I think about it and they come back they say, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Sometimes it takes a little time. Sometimes they answer one question and you think they've got it and they think about it and, well, what about this? And then you find another way. And it's a bit of an art. So I see it's primarily introspection and getting the feedback of others. Now, these tests can also be very helpful, but take them as part of the picture. Like, I wouldn't marry someone just based on an astrological compatibility. Not a good idea. Have that as one tool in your toolbox, fine. Jai Haribo. But don't base your life on it. Does that make sense? Yeah? So we're looking at, we're complex, holistic beings. And it's a complex, holistic thing. Traditionally, your parents, your teachers would be examining you as you were growing up. And they're starting to see, okay, you're like this, you're like this. And they may even have you try different things to get some experience. Like I asked with our first class on prosperity types, how did you feel when you have this? How did you feel when you didn't have it? Well, if you've never had it, it's kind of hard to say, how do you feel when you have it? So to have different, there's one book called Decisive, and they call this ooch, to ooch it, to try it. That's their word, not mine. I mean, this is also done, by the way, talked about in Jaiva Dharma in terms of your swarup. Hare Krishna. But what to speak of our temporary identity. I mean, look, sometimes it's totally, absolutely obvious from the time you're 3. Sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes it's overwhelmingly, absolutely obvious from the time you're a very young child. Other times it isn't so obvious. Sometimes it's confusing. I find the people who are the most confused are people who are a little older and have done a little of this and a little of that and a little of the other thing, and their parents probably pushed them into the wrong field, and these are the most confused people in my experience, and these are often the people that I have to spend the longest time in a consultation with. That's not an absolute, but that's in general. But anyway, I'm just thinking that the whole concept of I'm just going to tick off these boxes and put it through a machine, and that's sort of, it's sort of, again, the antithesis of what this is all about. Yes?
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Mata, for nice class. Actually, in the morning class, when you were describing about the crossing, after the class, I was thinking actually how you were describing that in ISKCON how this crossing is happening in different fields. At the same-
Everywhere.
at
And
the
we're
same
not
time-
immune.
At the same time, some things are coming to my mind that some of the good leaders we can also see that who are doing 2-3 fields together, but they are expert and doing them very well.
At doing what of them very well?
For example, someone is collecting money that can be the resource.
Wait a minute, I'm going to stop you right there. One of the 6 occupations listed in the Shastra for the field of ideas is collecting charity.
Charity.
Did you know that? Shastra.
Yes.
Shastra, one of the occupations given for people in the field of ideas is collecting charity. Just wanted to throw that in there. Okay.
So
Also, we talked about how the field of government in the modern day, not shastrically, not historically, but in the modern day, some nonprofit NGOs are doing government work. And whereas it was kind of a thing that if you're in the field of government, you're not supposed to be collecting charity, NGOs work by charity. So you could be doing government work and having it funded instead of by taxes and fines and fees, it could be funded by charity. I think you're making an association between money and resources. Sorry. One of the qualities of people in the field of ideas is we are very... Thank you. And I'm no longer, I'm not at least as embarrassed about it. Now, they may be doing many things very well also. First of all, I think you're making an automatic assumption that money equals resources. It doesn't. There's a particular value in the field of resources. The field of resources is that I'm creating wealth for society. I'm feeding society. I'm clothing society. I'm creating the wealth for society, and to do that, I have to make a profit. The people in resources are the main givers of the quantity of charity because they have more to give, usually. Your ideas and artistry people being satisfied don't usually have a whole lot. They might. Somebody might give because ideas person can have that as one of their occupations to collect charity, so they might have a whole bunch of it. But they're not really that into it. And the government people may also give lots of charity, but your resource people are, and generally artistry people, again, they're not ambitious to collect a lot. But if somebody is a fundraiser, that's probably an occupation in the field of ideas. Probably. Now also keep in mind you can be extremely good at the craft and information of something that's not your values, but you're going to be messing yourself up internally and you're going to be causing subtle or sometimes very gross problems. I'm sure many of us here are very, very good at things that are not in our own field. That doesn't mean we should be doing it. And that's exactly what Krishna says. It's exactly what he says. Don't do someone else's work even if you're very good at it. Even if you're better at it than your own work, in fact, he says. Because you're going to bring your values into that area. Yes, we see many bad examples in our Hare Krishna movement because we do. It's going on in the world. These things are poorly understood. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's well-intentioned. And it may look like, oh, they're doing everything wonderfully. They're not, actually. One of my godbrothers was working in the field of government in the Hare Krishna movement and apparently doing quite a very good job. And a few years ago, he retired from that, and now he's working exclusively in the field of ideas. So I was invited to some of his, he was giving seminars on Manashiksha, which I produced, and he had adapted my PowerPoints on it, and he specifically said, Urmila, why don't you come? And I'm like, Maharaj, you're glowing. You just look so happy. It's just like you're a different person. And he's like, yeah, I dropped that stuff I was doing for years that I shouldn't have been doing. So a lot of people might have seen that and said, wow, he was good at, but he wasn't. It was killing him. And actually a lot of people complained about him there because he was bringing in the wrong values. Sorry. Please don't hate me. No, if you do, that's actually okay. I actually really don't care. Yes, Prabhu. True.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So, should one seek a partner for marriage in the same field, or is it okay to get married with a partner with another field?
Oh my God. We have in our section about the life cycle, the relation of career to the life cycle, we also talk about women. It's 544. The Bhagavatam definitely talks about both men and women having varna, and it talks about that primarily in relationship to marriage. And so why is that? First of all, the psychology is different. When Prabhupada talks about what is the psychology of the field of government, he gives the example of a woman. And he said, you know, the queen was in the palace and the king had come back from battle and he comes to the front gate of the palace. Yes? The king has arrived. Please tell my wife, the queen, that I am here. Your Majesty, the king has arrived. Oh, has he been either victorious or injured? I don't know. I'll ask him. Your Majesty, the queen wants to know, have you been either victorious or injured? No. I am defeated and I am in good health. Your Majesty, he says that he has been defeated and in his good health. Don't let him in. He's an imposter, she says. And so the message goes down. The queen says, we are not to let you in. You are an imposter. So he turned around, went back, and won the battle. Prabhupada tells this story. So it's different psychology. Also, Krishna tells Rukmini that there should be equality between husband and wife. And what I always emphasize is, especially Krishna says that they should be equal in renunciation. I would say if you want to have one thing, please be equal in vairagya. Have an equal taste and appetite and desire for vairagya. If you have widely different desires in vairagya, you're going to be miserable. So not only was the idea that marriage should be in the same field for psychological compatibility, but also practically. Because when it says that a wife should serve her husband, that didn't just mean that she should give him doklas and massage his feet, but she was serving him in career. Prabhupada talks about ideal families. He says the woman is spinning, the husband is weaving, together they make a cloth. This is ideal family life. He says, I was seeing a family, husband, wife, children, they're all potters, they're together, they're making pots. Draupadi tells Satyabhama, she says, I'm the only one who knows the income and expenditure of the treasury. We're talking the empire. She was basically the secretary of the treasury. She said, and I alone manage the royal household of 100,000 people. That's like being the mayor of a small city. Right? And then we, of course, we have the gopis. What does gopi mean? What does it actually mean, gopi? Cowherd girls, right? So we have the gopis, young women, and they were taking their milk products. They were going in a group, and they were taking their milk products across the Yamuna to sell them in Mathura. Correct? Yes, that was a social system. They were businesswomen. So it's nice if you have compatibility, both because you'll understand each other, you'll have a similar psychology, you'll have a similar set of values. And it's also nice because that way, ideally, and this doesn't happen much in 2023, but ideally, the husband and wife work together in the same career. And ideally, that's done from home, which means there's extended family, or there's a village, and there's a servant class. And that's a whole other discussion about what the Industrial Revolution did to careers from home, and particularly to women's careers, and how it destroyed women, especially, and therefore destroyed the family. Can you be happy with a mixed marriage? Sure, people do it all the time. But it's, you know, it's just more challenging. It's like having a mixed cultural marriage also. It's more challenging. There genuinely are different cultures in the world. There just are, you know, and we do think differently in different parts of the world. So, you know, love may be intoxicating at first, but it's hard to just live with that for 40 years. It's very favorable if there can be compatibility. I mean, I know some very happy couples who are not compatible in their fields. And they've found a way to respect the values of the other person and to appreciate the values of the other person and to coordinate. But, I mean, there is a strong recommendation in Shastra for equality. By God himself also. That doesn't mean by birth, you know. It doesn't mean you just try to match things by family or birth. That's nonsense. Sorry for those of you who are really attached to that. But that's not going to make it. All right? If you have more questions, that's good. I'd like to thank you very much. Anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas. Anything bad here is my personal responsibility. So I hope this has again given answers to your questions and encourage you to have more questions for which you're seeking answers. I hope that at least some of you really go deeply into this and help others. I'd like to see eventually that in all of our temples we had a career Dharma guidance center, that we really helped our new devotees. One GBC member told me this should be in every bhakti training program, you know, that we really help our devotees to find out what is their nature, and that eventually we fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desire of bringing this to the world. I really, really hope that we can fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desire. It was something he said repeatedly. In one place he said as part of our mission, to bring this to the world, to have a world of peace and prosperity, where it's very easy to perform bhakti and people naturally see bhakti as part of their work. Thank you. Hare Krishna.